This is the CBS Evening News. Bob Schieffer sitting in tonight for Dan Rather. Good evening. Well, a government report out today concludes that well over 1/3 of the American people are living in areas of serious air pollution. And for the first time, U.S. officials gave an accounting of just how much toxic material is being released into the air. Medical correspondent Susan Spencer begins our coverage.
Despite the Clean Air Act, despite attempts to regulate, American industry is spewing forth 2.4 billion pounds of hazardous chemicals each year, toxics known to cause birth defects, cancer, and other diseases.
The bad news is that's over 10 pounds for every man, woman, and child in this nation.
Information provided to the Environmental Protection Agency by industry itself shows 8 states with releases of over 100 million pounds of air toxics annually. Leader among them, Texas, whose petrochemical industries contribute heavily. Second, Louisiana, followed by Tennessee, Virginia, and Ohio.
The point is that nothing is being done by the Environmental Protection Agency to regulate the release of these toxic chemicals.
Toxics come under the Clean Air Act, but of the roughly 300 cited in this new report, the EPA regulates only 7. The government blames the act itself, saying that lawsuits, red tape, and changing information make it impossible to move quickly on others.
We have not succeeded in that regard. We found that the legislation doesn't give us the tools that we need to deal with the kind of complexity that we are facing.
The EPA wants to change the law to regulate by industrial process, not by specific chemical. Environmentalists demand action on all 300 toxic substances.
We are allowing these chemicals to be emitted into our environment and not have any knowledge about where they go and what the impact is going to be.
As if today's information on toxic chemicals wasn't overwhelming enough, the EPA also released its annual air quality report, focusing on pollution not from industry, but from automobiles.
Directionally, down is better than up, and we have a situation here where we are moving down.
At least on lead and carbon monoxide, but ozone levels fed by other emissions rose 14% last year. Overall, the EPA concedes more than 100 million Americans live in areas with serious air pollution, and no one has any clear answer how to change that. Susan Spencer, CBS News, Washington.
You could make out the Hollywood sign today, even see the nearby hills, and the horizon wasn't as brown as it can be. But any way you look at it, Los Angeles remains America's smog capital, and air quality officials have proposed drastic lifestyle changes here to clean up the air. Changes the critics call draconian.
They're going to outlaw barbecues, backyard barbecues. Use a barbecue, go to jail. They're going to charge people to park when they go to the grocery store.
There won't really be a barbecue SWAT team roaming Southern California, but charcoal lighter fluids would be banned under this wide-ranging plan aimed at reducing chemicals in the air. The main target, though, is the automobile. Free parking would virtually be eliminated to discourage driving. By the year 2007, all cars in the 4-county greater Los Angeles area would have to be electric-powered or use other clean fuels. There would even be a ban on new drive-through windows for restaurants, banks, and other stores. Officials concede it won't be easy.
Southern Californians in particular think that driving alone in their automobile is right up there next to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
The plan, which affects some 12 million people, would ban gas-powered mowers and leaf blowers, ban aerosol deodorant sprays because they help create smog. Carpooling and van pools would be encouraged even more. Businesses asked to rearrange working hours, move jobs closer to where the workers live. Oil refineries, electrical plants, and other industries would come under tighter pollution controls.
It's going to have, I think, some impacts throughout the world in developing and pushing technology for being able to do things cleaner, cheaper, more effectively, and more efficiently.
Government agencies from Washington to the local level must still sign off on the plan, which sets out to do the seemingly impossible, come between Californians and their cars. Jerry Bowen, CBS News, Los Angeles.
In what may signal a stormier relationship between Republicans and Democrats in Congress, House Republicans today elected conservative activist Newt Gingrich of Georgia to be the minority whip. That's the #2 leadership post. Gingrich favors a confrontational approach to the Democrats, including pressing ethics charges against House Speaker Jim Wright. He's elected today over the less outspoken Congressman Edward Madigan of Illinois. Gingrich replaces Dick Cheney, who left Congress to become Defense Secretary. The House took up the Democrat version of a bill today that would raise the national minimum wage for the first time since 1981. President Bush backs another version, but all signs now point to compromise. Deborah Potter has our report on that.
When Alfred Peterson was laid off after 22 years at a factory in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, the only job he could find was pumping gas at this mobile station for the minimum wage, $3.35 an hour.
My pride, well, it's really hurt because I can't do the things for my family that I wanted to.
The Petersons are not alone. Gary Gaunt also made the minimum wage blacktopping roads and had to depend on donated food to make ends meet.
There is nobody can make it on $3.35 and raise a family. I've tried it. You can't do it.
Most minimum wage workers are not teenagers. More than a quarter are heads of household living below the poverty line. But small business owners like Bill Stone say they can't afford to pay beginning workers a higher minimum. If it goes up, he says, his plate glass company just won't hire any new employees.
It is going to be anti the very people it wants to help. The recycled worker, the entry-level worker, the person looking for a new opportunity.
Congress has not raised the minimum wage in 8 years. The Reagan administration firmly opposed any increase. But this year, the argument is not over whether to raise it, but how much.
What do we want?
Fair wages.
When do we want them?
Now.
Organized labor and congressional Democrats want a minimum of at least $4.55 an hour phased in over 3 years. The White House wants $4.25. But the real dispute is over the administration's plan for a so-called training wage for 6 months to let employers pay less to newly hired workers.
We don't want to saw off the first rung of the economic ladder, that first entry-level job.
What will happen is you'll replace heads of households, in many instances the sole supporter for families, with newer entrants.
The White House is talking tough, with the president threatening a veto.
This is not a time to have raises bigger than that we've thought out here, and it is important that we hold the line.
But there could be room for compromise. The latest Democratic proposal now includes a training wage for 60 days, and sponsors hope they can work out a deal that will finally lead to an increase in the minimum.
They should have done it 2-3 years ago. They should have kept raising it. People cannot live on minimum wage. It's rough.
For now, the Petersons and 4 million other minimum wage workers are still waiting. Deborah Potter, CBS News, Washington.
At the Oliver North trial today, the attention was on North's former secretary, Faun Hall, who came to the federal courthouse to testify that she had indeed altered and shredded top-secret documents for North, and in what she called a stupid thing to do, said in one case she had smuggled documents hidden in her boots out of the White House. Still to come on the CBS Evening News, Bob McNamara with Central American refugees on the long, dangerous journey toward the American dream, and Bob Fall on the bitter argument about the spotted owl. Congress heard a battery of new charges today about Pentagon contract fraud and overcharges, all of it involving a transport plane that's been a subject of controversy for years. David Martin reports.
The $121 million C-5 transport plane is probably the most publicized case of cost overruns in Pentagon history. Today, a congressional committee added another chapter to the story.
This order involves a clear conflict of interest, the revolving door, apparent fraud.
The order is for $68 million worth of crash repair kits, spare parts that could be used to make repairs in the event of a crash which did not totally destroy the plane, something that has happened only twice. Lockheed, which makes the C-5, seemed to be charging exorbitant prices for some of the parts in the repair kits.
It's a little brass washer. It's got a price tag on it of
$229.94. Lockheed acknowledged the price was high, but said it was because they had to make the washers from scratch.
Had we had the machine running or the operation intact, those parts would have cost $5.20. But we had to start all over.
Lockheed wanted to charge $315.84 for making this shim when it already had the same part in its supply bins for $22.07.
An Air Force cost analyst wrote a memo warning about these, quote, horror stories, saying, "I am concerned about our culpability and possible ramifications if this buy ever becomes public." One other thing became public today. The Air Force colonel who arranged the deal now works for Lockheed.
When did the colonel begin looking for another job?
The first contact that we have record of with Lockheed occurred a few weeks after that.
The Air Force says it has no plans to cancel the contract for the crash repair kits, but it does plan to renegotiate the price of some of the items in the kits. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
4 leaders of a Colombian cocaine gang and a close associate of the Prime Minister of the Bahamas were indicted in Florida today on charges of smuggling more than $1 billion worth of drugs into the United States. In all, the federal grand jury named 30 defendants, 6 of them now in U.S. custody. President Bush returned to his war on drugs theme today during a trip to rural Pennsylvania. He said drugs aren't just a big city problem. And at a stop in neighboring Delaware, where he talked to a police group, Mr. Bush hinted there may be more action soon on the limiting of sales of semi-automatic weapons.
Time has come to do something about these automated weapons that are threatening the lives of these people behind me. And I'm going to see that it takes place.
Back in Washington, First Lady Barbara Bush visited a home today that cares for children infected with the AIDS virus. Mrs. Bush made a point of holding and hugging the children to show compassion and to show that it's a safe thing to do. Shocker today in the world of professional football. Pete Rozelle, commissioner of the National Football League since 1959, announced with no advance warning that he's retiring effective immediately. He said he'll stay on the job until a successor is found. Rozelle said he just wants to enjoy more stress-free time with his family. The Cincinnati Reds lost to the St. Louis Cardinals in exhibition baseball today, but getting a lot more attention than the game was Pete Rose, the embattled manager of the Reds, who could be facing the biggest loss of his career. Peter Van Zandt now with that.
No comment.
Baseball legend Pete Rose isn't talking about a published report in this week's Sports Illustrated, which claims that he placed bets on baseball games, a violation that, if proven, could result in a lifetime suspension.
See, I don't know what's going on. I don't even read the paper. I can turn my car phone off now. There's no radio in my car. No, I don't even know what's going on. What's being said?
What's being said is that Rose used the owner of this restaurant near Cincinnati, a man named Ron Peters, to place bets on baseball games. Alan Stateman is Peters' attorney.
I just want to stress that Ron Peters plans on cooperating fully with the Major League authorities.
If Rose did bet on a baseball game, he's gambled with his baseball career and legacy. If he wagered on any baseball team, he could face a year suspension. But if he bet on his own team, the Cincinnati Reds, he could be banished from baseball for life.
You know, betting on one's own team or against one's own team, that would be horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, it could cost him his entire career, his reputation, everything. But, people are saying, that could cost him a spot in the Hall of Fame.
Rose has never denied that he enjoys gambling, but he claims his wagering has always focused on horse and dog racing.
They're going to tell me that this man's betting on baseball? They're crazy. They are crazy.
Pete Rose was one of the greatest baseball players of all time. In 1985, Rose broke the all-time career base hit record set by the legendary Ty Cobb. Today, there is another published report which says that Rose's gambling debts were so high, he was forced to sell a piece of his own history.
That you sold the bat and the ball which was used to break Ty Cobb's record. Is that true?
No comment.
It's almost gut-wrenching time for me. I feel a pit in my stomach because of all of this, and I feel for Pete Rose.
The baseball commissioner is expected to announce Rose's punishment this week, a decision which could force the man called Mr. Baseball out of baseball. Peter Van Zandt, CBS News, Plant City, Florida.
A federal judge in New York declared another mistrial today in the stock manipulation trial of GAF Corporation. After the jury reported it was deadlocked, it was the second mistrial in the case in which GAF and a company vice president are accused of manipulating the price of Union Carbide stock. The government case is based on information provided by inside trader Ivan Boesky. Prosecutors say they intend to try the case again. Space shuttle Atlantis was rolled out of the launch pad today. Blastoff now set for April 28th. Atlantis is scheduled to launch a $500 million robot probe of the planet Venus. The United States and the Palestine Liberation Organization met today for the first time since President Bush took office. The talks in Tunis apparently made little headway. U.S. Ambassador to Tunisia, Robert Pelletreau, suggested ways to ease tension in the occupied territories. The chief PLO negotiator said what's causing the tension is the Israeli occupation. One of the thorniest problems facing the Bush administration is the steady stream of undocumented immigrants from Central America. Many of them enter the United States through Mexico. U.S. officials want the Mexican government to stem the flow, but in the meantime, thousands of illegal aliens are crossing the border into Texas. Bob McNamara has their story.
58679. The scene is played out almost every night now. A smuggler's van packed with illegal aliens ready to leave a dingy Brownsville motel, destination Houston. But this night, the catch was the van driver was an undercover Border Patrol agent tipping off an alien roundup.
Supposed to be some here in number 2.
In room after room, border agents discover men, women, and children, more than 70 in all. Some of the women weak. And again, they are mostly Salvadorans and Nicaraguans.
This is just one of many hotels that we know in the area that are like this right now.
Yeah. So this doesn't surprise you at all?
No, not at all.
Also among the refugees, agents are sure they found one of their most wanted men, the smuggler, the man the aliens each paid dearly to get them here.
I'm pretty sure by the time we get through with the investigation, they paid him over $1,500 or whatever from El Salvador to here.
But despite their numbers, this is but a drop in the flood of Central Americans still crossing the border. People who, like countless others, began treacherous journeys here almost 2,000 miles south, crossing the Suchiate River on the Guatemala-Mexican border. Wading or floating across, there is little to stop them. The border fence, like an open gate. The border police, seldom seen. And though refugees say they know the U.S. doesn't want them, even warnings from former illegal aliens are ignored.
They don't listen.
They don't want to hear that they can't get in.
They will try to get any way to get to the United States.
Crowding into rickety Mexican buses at Tapachula for a 36-hour trip north were 2 frightened Salvadoran refugees and a Guatemalan woman. While at Tapachula's airport, officials say Central American refugees disguised as tourists use the airport every day. It's a migration Mexican officials say they forbid, but feebly enforce.
Our border is open for political reasons, but they shouldn't cross the country in order to make problems to another neighbor.
And whether wealthy or poor or fleeing political persecution, many refugees find common ground on the banks of the Rio Grande, finally wading into Texas when border patrollers are not watching.
Well, they got the main thing, which is desire to come over, and that'll carry you a long way.
Today, despite constant helicopter border patrols added to toughen this country's tighter alien immigration rules, they keep coming and they keep getting caught. Here, 4 more Salvadorans. 4 men added to the more than 4,000 arrested refugees this year being housed now in rapidly crowding detention camps and shelters while waiting to plead for asylum. In the meantime, afraid of being denied American asylum, Mexican refugee shelters are filling too. An 80-year-old Nicaraguan among the 55 taken in by a Catholic church. Many now telling stories of being robbed or assaulted on their trek through Mexico, only to find American laws tougher too.
Did she realize it was going to be this difficult?
No. Still, they keep coming north. Salvadorans Julio and Danielle, though robbed by Mexican police, would not turn back. While along a road, 2 Guatemalan families rested, still confident of not denying their children the American dream. Bob McNamara, CBS News, Tapachula, Mexico.
You get a little
The ancient woodlands of the northwestern United States are the center of a major environmental debate. One side in this battle is fighting for the survival of an industry, the other for the survival of a species. Bob Faun has the report.
The northern spotted owl hasn't even been seen by that many people. It ventures out only at night. It makes very little noise, but it has the whole Northwest squawking.
If this bird is declared endangered, the timber industry is going to be brought to a screeching halt.
It's a life and death issue, yeah.
Especially in logging communities which fear they could lose thousands of jobs if the U.S. Forest Service stands by its decision to place thousands of acres of virgin timber off limits to save the spotted owls.
Science tells us that that's what those owls need to successfully thrive and breed young.
We really are up against ecology wars today. This is a religion to the environmental effort out there. This community is definitely endangered.
That's 4,000 jobs overnight. I'm saying that's falling off a cliff.
With its timber access restricted, this mill has already laid off 25% of its employees.
Those people were born here and raised here, and now they don't have a job. And the way things are going here, they're not going to have a job because they can't find them anywhere else.
The issue is to take more and more land out of the free enterprise system and to forever preserve it. We are saying enough is enough.
The logging industry says the owls are not endangered now and never have been, but that environmentalists are using them as an emotional symbol to stop timber cutting in national forests.
The spotted owl is like a canary in a coal mine. If the owl goes, I think others will soon follow.
Conservationists argue that 90% of the virgin forests have already been wiped out and that without immediate protection, the rest and the birds will soon be destroyed.
We don't want to put people out of work, and we don't feel that we are. And there are a lot of things that can be done to sustain jobs in the timber industry.
But a lot of things aren't being done, so the debate rages between an industry which feels it's up against the wall and conservationists who won't back down.
Right now, we're sitting at 90 million acres preserved in the United States with another 60 million in the wings. Where are we going to stop?
Extinction. You can't compromise when a species is at the brink of extinction.
Ultimately, it is a conflict of values. One side asking, can we afford to give up so much to save all this? And the other answering, can we afford not to? Bob Faun, CBS News, Cosmopolis, Washington.
And that's the news. Bob Schieffer sitting in tonight for Dan Rather. Dan will be back tomorrow. Good night.
This is CBS. The faces of our future.